Welcome to this Friday episode, Poddies. I am excited. It is Friday. I'm getting ready to wind down for the weekend. And that's always a very exciting time for me. So the weekend, I don't know. I think I've said this on the podcast before. I often hear from people that they're like, oh, when you run your own business, you basically don't get excited about weekends anymore. You get excited about Monday mornings. And I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't think that's the case. I think you get excited about weekends because you've still been putting in hard work all week, and that is where I am. So it's Friday and I have a really interesting guest and a really interesting and almost like challenging conversation today. So today I'm bringing on one of my awesome clients and member of my private membership, the Dotties, and her name is Khaira. And I'm really excited about the conversation that we've had today. It's been different. And actually what we've been talking about is something that is potentially controversial topic, but also something that really needs talking about in the industry and that needs wider attention. So the conversation that we had today was all about diversity. And actually Sharn is somebody who founded a company based on helping Asian female entrepreneurs build their own businesses. And she pitched me, I don't know, I want to say 2 months ago, like we're really cranking out this batch recording. I'm so impressed with myself. But she pitched me a few months ago and said that, there is this big diversity issue in the online business space. And would I be open to talking about it on the podcast? And of course I said yes, because, she's amazing and she's done some incredible things for, I want to say, women of color in the online business space. But it was quite a challenging conversation for me to have. And I go into it in the episode and I kind of explain my views. But when you are listening to this episode, if you are listening and you're thinking, yes, I absolutely completely understand that actually, my cultural heritage or, the background or upbringing that I've had has led me to, have these ingrained beliefs about sales and about business building and things, please hit me up on email. It's very difficult, I think, to sometimes talk about diversity in this space. And I've been lucky enough, obviously, to have Sharn on the show today and have a really interesting conversation with her. And I've got some incredible clients who produce incredible pieces of content around diversity. So if you are looking for other resources about diversity in business, then please make sure that you do reach out, jessica@jessicalorimer.com, and I can point you in the direction of some really cool people and some really cool resources that you can use if you are somebody who feels like your cultural heritage or your upbringing or your background is leading to other problems in your business. Okay, so I hope you enjoy today's episode. It is a juicy one. It does tackle some important issues, and we talk through some of the reasons why people of color might find it more challenging to start a business and what we should be doing about diversity in the online industry, and even some things that have already happened that we, would like to change, and how we can all become allies in this space and help everybody rise and sell effectively and create these amazing businesses. And like I say, Sharn is a member of my awesome private membership, my Dotties community, and she's been phenomenal and had some incredible successes over the last 6 or 7 months, including having a huge multi-5-figure launch for her latest mastermind program. And she's obviously just moved back to the UK as well from the lovely Canada. So it was a pleasure to have her on the show. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And I hope it challenges your perspectives and, really raises some interesting questions for you, because it really did for me. Enjoy the episode. Okay, Poddies, how exciting. I have somebody on the podcast today who is joining us from a couple of special places. She's a part of my awesome membership community, the Dotties, and in her own right has developed a phenomenal business over the last couple of years, working with a specific group of female entrepreneurs. And that's what we're going to be talking about today on the show. So welcome to the show, Sharn. I'm so excited you're here.
Hey, Jess, I'm so excited to be here.
It's going to be awesome. I'm very, very excited. And also, I love it when people sound excited about coming on the show. Sometimes you do the whole podcast recording, you're like, I'm really excited for you to be here. And people are like, oh, yeah, Fine.
No, I'm super, super excited.
So you are a poddy, you've been listening to the podcast, you know how this works, and you're in the dotties. What made you want to come and share some wisdom on the Smart Leader Sell podcast?
Yeah, so Jess, obviously I've been in your community for nearly a year now, I think. And obviously I was following you previously. And I think, the strategies you always share are so, so practical and, obviously not airy-fairy at all. It's very much, strategy based. So I think it'd be great for me to come on and talk from a perspective of, a woman in color, a woman in business. I know this conversation around diversity and cultural blocks is huge at the moment. And I think it's, so it'll probably be so relevant to you, some parts of your audience as well. So a great time to come in, I think.
100%. 100%. So let's dig into this, because now, and I always preface conversations about any kind of inequality with, I may or may not have experienced this. And in this case, I definitely haven't. And, when you're listening to this episode, please don't think, Jess, this is, a kind of, I don't know, a topic you know nothing about and you're not qualified to talk on, because I don't. That is the thing. I am not a woman of color. I don't know what it's like. And I know that there are certain situations and cultural changes and, just in some cases, lack of opportunities that women of color face that I have never faced and that I never will. And that makes me incredibly sad on a lot of levels, and also incredibly angry on a lot of levels, because I think, in a world where we already have so much inequality, we all need to be allies for each other. We have the whole gender issue at the moment. We have the people of color issues that are coming up periodically. We have issues when it comes to religion or political belief.
Yeah.
And actually, it's a time where we should be being allies to one another and celebrating difference and actually looking at what the differences are so that we can actually help each other overcome obstacles. So that's why I'm so excited to have you on today, because I think, there is such a difference in the cultural ways that perhaps women of color experience sales and business building as a whole. And I would love you to share those experiences and for us to have a really interesting conversation about how everybody can either become an ally or how women of color themselves can be building better businesses that work for them, and overcome some of the obstacles and challenges that they're facing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And such a great time to have this conversation as well. I think it's been so relevant, more so I think since last year, obviously since Meghan Markle came into the royal family. And I think we've been having, this conversation's been happening for, over a year now, more predominantly. So yeah, it's a great time to talk about it, definitely.
So let's talk about how you kind of came into the business space and what you found, like what was different for you?
So my background, for the listeners that probably don't know, I was originally, well, I've still got the wedding planning business. I've got a luxury wedding planning business, and it's, geared towards Asian weddings. And obviously I worked in the Asian wedding industry, and, everyone around me, of course, I was dealing with, sometimes obviously multicultural clients, but predominantly Asian suppliers, Asian couples. So I was just very much in the Asian wedding industry. And a couple of years ago, I set up the Asian Female Entrepreneur Collective, where I started, it all started with kind of London workshops, but then it was a collective geared towards Asian women, so women of color, basically, because I found that there was like a real niche in that market. And there just wasn't specific groups at the time for Facebook for, definitely that I couldn't see for Asian female entrepreneurs. And then what sort of started happening was, obviously I started doing the workshops, and, I've had a lot of press recently. Well, previously with my wedding planning business, I'd been in lots of, global wedding blogs and magazines. And then sort of I was focusing more on the mentoring side for the last year or so, and definitely obviously this year as well, while still obviously planning weddings in the background. But what I started seeing as I kind of started stepping up as a leader in this space for Asian women, I was just not really seeing any women of color. So I would go to events, and, a lot of the speakers were white, and, some really big, a few months ago, a couple of really big events got announced this year, and I looked at the lineup and everyone was white. I couldn't see a woman of color. And first of all, I just thought, okay, I'm just being a little bit paranoid. I just thought maybe I was kind of just imagining it. But then when I started speaking to colleagues in the industry and my own mentor, who's actually a woman of color as well. So my mentor, who is a woman of color, and then I started speaking to other peers in the industry that were obviously women of color as well. And what we started to see was that there was definitely a lack of diversity, especially in the kind of coaching, mentoring space. I was looking at wellness events in London, all the panel was white. Some really big events got announced later this year. They were obviously white. And it just became really apparent to me that, women of color are really, really underrepresented, whether it's, they're going onto podcasts, whether they're being speakers, whether they're getting, employed in, under big businesses. And yeah, it just kind of hit me. And I was like, first of all, I thought I was being paranoid, like I said, but then I was like, no, this is an actual issue. And I think the biggest, it hit me really hard when I saw a Facebook ad by the amazing Carrie Green, and there was a picture there that it represented all women. So it represented an Asian woman, a Black woman, an older woman. I think there was a Chinese lady. And it looked, from seeing obviously all the ads that we see, it looked, obviously it looked very represented, which was amazing. I did feed that back to Carrie. But I think then I started realizing that actually, women of color are underrepresented, definitely.
I think that's a huge issue. And actually, I think there are two issues. One is that we have the issue that women of color are underrepresented. And the second issue is that I think people are uncertain about how to behave and how to help combat that issue, because, I can only speak from what I see and experience. And like I said earlier in the episode, I'm very honest. I can't say that I experience or that I understand how it feels, because I don't. And I think that's the distinction that I always have to make, is I don't. And in some ways that's quite difficult to admit, because you always want to feel like you can empathize, and to a certain degree you can empathize on, okay, well, there are cultural differences and there are this and there are that, but the other side of it is that I think you have to be quite open and honest and say, well, I haven't experienced that, and so I can't necessarily give advice on it. I can sympathize with it, I can empathize with how you must be feeling about the situation, but I can't actually say from a first person perspective. And so, yeah, I think we had an unfortunate situation last year with Danielle Laporte, and something really unfortunate happened with her advertising and her social media presence. And there seemed to be no way to come back from it that was good. People were very offended. I have talked about it on the podcast before. So if you haven't heard about that situation, it's good to go and get all of the facts. But I felt like in some ways it was just, there was a no-win situation there. It was very difficult for her to convey how apologetic she was, because people were berating her for a mistake that wasn't hers necessarily, and it was quite a difficult situation.
Yeah, and I obviously saw that as well, and I could definitely see why people were of course upset. And I think the thing is, Jess, it's such a big area and there's so much education to be done around diversity. I mean, we just haven't got enough time to go into it today, but there's things like, white, I'm sure you've heard about white privilege and tokenism and all of those things. And I think that obviously that happened, and I think it was a great lesson for us all, because sometimes we only have to look at that incident that happened a few weeks ago with the, give me what his name is, but the whole chimp incident when he posted the pic, and people thinking that's acceptable when obviously it isn't. And I think it's a really difficult one, because obviously the BAME community, they are massively affected, and then when something like this happens, people don't know how to react. And I think the best thing you can do in this situation is, I think the worst thing to do is, kind of say, oh no, like kind of become the victim yourself. Because obviously the incident we saw a few weeks ago, he absolutely knew what to do it. And God knows what he Googled to find that image. And obviously it upsets so many people of colour and not colour, it's not acceptable. And I think that if that ever does happen, and Danielle Laporte, she was very heavily criticised. I think some people did say that she went into victim mode. I think the key thing, like with anything else, is just say, I made a mistake, I am extremely sorry. But I think at the moment, obviously, it's a very delicate subject, because all of these incidences keep happening. And it's like, we're in 2019, and I think the key thing is, last year, obviously, Meghan Markle got married into the royal family, and that was amazing and incredible. And it represents multicultural Britain. But I think like that is the start of it rather than the end of it. And obviously on this level, there is so much work to do. And I think especially in the coaching industry where it is so underrepresented, I think, because there's just so much lack of diversity, really, especially in the wellness sector in London. Like I see all of the events and everyone's a white speaker.
So I think there are a couple of interesting points there. I mean, especially, you know, everyone's talking about the Meghan Markle and, you know, how we're trying to progress, you know, we are trying to move forward as a society. But I guess what are the key, maybe the two top key issues that you see for specifically Asian females who are trying to run a business? What are the top two key issues that they face when either they're setting up their business or moving into running their business? And why specifically do you feel like they face those issues and they might not otherwise?
Interesting one, because when we're talking about Asian women, we're talking about obviously, you know, part of it's the Indian origin. And I think that as Asian women, you know, family, like Italians, I guess, is such a big part of our way of life. You know, we all know that, you know, Indians and Asians and, you know, Italians, like they have a big emphasis on family. And I think shame is such a big thing, and obviously Brené Brown has talked about this a lot recently. And definitely when I was growing up, it was all around, oh my god, like don't bring shame on your family. Like I remember I wasn't even allowed to cut my hair when I was little. Like wow. I don't think I cut my hair till I was like, I don't know, in year 11. And my parents are very strict on me, and it was all about, okay, if you cut your hair, like you're gonna bring shame on your family. If you like wear makeup, you're gonna bring shame on your family. And it's very much like, what will other people think? Cultures where it's the Indian culture, the Asian culture, you know, Italian culture, where, you know, family is such a big part. You know, it's the foundation of a lot of cultures. This plays out when, you know, when you launch a business, because it absolutely plays into the visibility block. And I really do think that, you know, specific groups such as Asian women, they struggle with visibility. I think every business owner struggles with visibility, whether you're introvert or extrovert. But I think Asian women particularly, you know, massively struggle because they're constantly thinking about what their family thinks. And, you know, I ran a challenge in my group a couple of months ago, and this was like one of the key issues. What will other people think? And what will my family think? And it's so closely linked to shame as well, which is absolutely insane.
And it's really hard, isn't it? I think, because obviously you get people, and when they're in that cycle of shame, and I think, you know, it's interesting because I think shame is one of those things that is perhaps more apparent in women than in men. We tend to have a lot more shame around, you know, how we deal with finances and how we portray ourselves and our visibility and things like that. But it's interesting to me that there is, you know, or there are these groups of women who have different experiences, different cultural backgrounds, who actually feel that more painfully than, you know, women as a whole or men as a whole. You know, and it poses the question, you know, how do we combat that? How do we become better allies for these women? What can we do as business owners to support them online?
There's so many things that you can do. Obviously, I always come from it from a mindset perspective. I think that, you know, if you want, as you know, Jess, if you want to be successful in business, you have to be out there. We're living in a world where, you know, so many of our strategies are dominated by social media. So I think it's a case of, it's just simple things like liking someone's Facebook post. I think it's obviously for any business owner, it's very daunting when you first set up your business, or you're constantly putting content out there, no one's, you know, sharing it or liking it. And I think that especially when you, and I've seen a couple of dotties as well that have shared some great content around why, you know, a lot of the people they admire in the business world, like the Marie Forleos and so on, but they're all white. And I think just, you know, really sharing that content and liking that content and, you know, cheering people on as well when they do write about diversity or, you know, those kinds of topics can be really, really powerful. I think it gives anyone actually a confidence boost for sure.
I love that. And I think that is so important. It's kind of like making diversity a non-dirty word in the entrepreneurial space, you know, and even if perhaps like me, you know, you feel like you can't necessarily contribute to certain parts of the discussion because it's not an experience you have. Ultimately, you have to kind of champion other people and become allies for other people. to try and change the situation?
The nail on the head there. I think a lot of white women, they're scared to sometimes share their opinions or share things because they don't think their opinion is valid because they're white. But actually, influencers in this space, for example, last week there's been, this whole story around Sudan and how it hasn't got as much coverage as, Paris did, for example. And I think I've seen a lot of, white influencers sharing that on their Insta stories, and it makes me so happy. And I've reached out to them and I said, thank you for sharing this, because I think sometimes women feel like that it's not their place because they're not a woman of color. But actually, imagine if all the leaders, globally shared this kind of content, so much more awareness would be raised. And then other people, such as, when I remember when I first put my post out there, I was so scared to say about diversity. I think it champions them as well, and it empowers them to talk about it and their experiences. And I think it's not being negative. I hate this whole calling out culture because that's just not in my nature to be like that. But I think being part of the change by offering a supportive and compassionate opinion rather than, oh my God, did you see what she did? That's not going to solve anything. It's more about raising awareness and sharing that content, which is so important.
I love that. I really love that. And I'm just so grateful you come on to share how we can be more aware and how we can be more supportive of every group of people. I know that we're talking specifically about Asian women in particular, but, I think it's really important that, we kind of expand it and that every poddy listening understands that it's not necessarily just about the Asian women that we're talking. It's about the conversation of, people who feel or are part of a minority for who they are or what they do, and whatever problems, or obstacles you face in business, they're not necessarily different. The visibility struggle is the same, internally for everybody, but just to recognize what your potential pitfalls might be based on who you are as a person, but also the labels that you've grown up with, and know that there are allies out there who can support you and who want to support you and see you succeed.
One of the key things that we can all do is, say for example, it doesn't mean, whatever group you're from, if you do see, an event that's underrepresented or isn't representative of all communities, just simply things like sending an email and suggesting experts, or suggesting, there's now stock image sites, and this runs so deep. There's actually stock image sites, for women of color, because so many times, we see just stock images of white women, and it's just those little things that can make such a big difference. And I think collectively, we can really make a big change. And also, when you do see brands championing diversity, then obviously, cheering them on as well. That can be really, really powerful, because I know for some people it's, people think, oh, it's a bit political, I don't really want to get involved in this. But actually, it's so important to include, all groups really, especially when you're putting on really big events in London. If all of your speakers are white, naturally you're going to attract, it's just not going to appeal to a wide range of audience, which I think in 2019 multicultural Britain, I think that's really, really important.
I love that. Thank you so much for this today. Seriously, it's been eye-opening, and I think it's one of those things, like you say, it can be really challenging and it can be quite scary to start the conversation or have the conversation when you are not in the minority you're discussing. So thank you for kind of helping me navigate that as sensitively as possible. Where can people find you? Where can these women find you? Because you're somebody who, your business has grown exponentially. I've watched you grow exponentially in the last year. You've just had this huge £40,000 mastermind launch. You're somebody who is doing hugely well and really representing that Asian female portion of the population in a really, really positive way. So where can they find you if they want to know more about working with you, or about how you are kind of championing Asian women to move forward and create bigger and better businesses?
Thank you so much, Jess. That means a lot coming from you, for sure. Yeah, so I've got a couple of outlets where you can find me. Obviously, I'm on Instagram, Asian_female_entrepreneur. I've also got a huge Facebook group, which you can find under Asian Female Entrepreneur Collective. And we're going to be having a website launching very soon, which is APEC SLS215collective.com. So again, that shows you that, necessary to have big launches, you don't always need shiny websites.
I love that. I love that. So there you go, guys. If you are somebody who is really interested in either contributing to this movement or having a further discussion, or, you're an Asian woman and you're looking for some business support and you want the help and support of a community who genuinely does understand all of the challenges that you're facing, then please make sure that you reach out to Sharn. And if you have enjoyed today's episode as much as I've enjoyed recording it, then make sure you head over onto Instagram and let us know what your key takeaway was and what you think about this discussion and how we can champion all allies moving forward. Sharn, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks so much, Jess, for having me. Thank you.
Right, guys, I will see you in the next episode on Monday. But like I say, if you have enjoyed today's conversation, please make sure you head over on social media. Let us know what your key takeaways were. And obviously, make sure that you are over there checking out some of Sharn's content. It really is interesting. Even if you're not an Asian female entrepreneur, make sure you check out some of that content on diversity. It really can be absolutely eye-opening. I'll see you in Monday's episode.